Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of TVK Podcast. It's an enjoyable episode. I hope you enjoy the stories that we explore in this episode. We do need to give a content warning. There is some discussion of suicide. So please, if that raises concerns for you, you can go to our website, tvk.org.au, and we have a resources page with a list of organisations who can assist. Alternatively, if you go to qlife.org.au, they have a web chat, or they can be contacted by phone on 1800 184 527. Let's jump into the episode now, and thanks for listening. Thank you very much for tuning in, listeners. This is our first episode of TVK for a while now. We've had a bit of a break, and we're bringing you a very special episode. So what we're going to talk about today is gender affirming care for trans youth. And we've got two very special guests joining us today. We have Julia and Ed joining us, and they've been on a gender affirming care, Julia as a parent and Ed as a trans youth. And we're going to talk a bit about their story. So, firstly, though, let's do a little bit of an intro. So, people, listeners, get a bit of an idea of who you are. Julia.
Well, hi everyone, and thank you so much for inviting us onto your show, Kate. It's really special, and what you're doing is amazing. So thank you, firstly, and to have the opportunity to share our journey is really special as well. So I'm a vet and a mum of two kids, Ed being one, Will being the other. And we've sort of had a pretty good life, I think.
Yes.
We've had property. Both my kids grew up on a farm. Majority of time I've been a single mum. So we've had a pretty special bond and a pretty special journey outside anything we're going to chat about today. We're quite a close little family. So I feel very fortunate to have such beautiful children, and I'm hoping you will all meet and love Ed today like I do.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Ed, the child. I guess the relevance for this is I am a transgender youth. I transitioned when I was I guess I came out when I was quite young, like 13 around then, but so I'm assigned female at birth, but I am identified as a man. And that obviously is a very interesting journey and very different from most other kids, but it's it's been a whole thing. And I'm quite happy where I am right now. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for the little intros there. Ed, you mentioned that at 13 you came out as trans to your mum. So do you remember much about that? Like sort of what do you remember about that conversation and sort of how that came about?
Yeah, I obviously I ruminate a lot and get anxious, things like that. So when I first initially was like, I'm gonna come out because I wanted to. I wanted to start living as male, even though I already was, but I wanted to outwardly. It was extremely, extremely nervous and stressful. My mum is probably the best one to ever like come out to, like, compared to other friends, things like that. Like, she's been most supportive, but um discussion around like transgender topics, things like that, wasn't much of a common thing in any day talk for anything, or especially like, I guess, even though back then was only like five something years ago.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard either parents other than I guess things that were probably in media, which weren't as prominent, talk about many things. So I was just nervous about anything.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of things in media might like I guess demonize trans people, or I just had only focused on the negative, so I was just scared about every bad thing that possibly could have happened. Um, so I think just one night after like months and months of being like, okay, I want to tell my parents or my mom at least. I don't know. I can't really remember. I think I was just crying in my room, and then you came in, and then I just kind of said everything, and you just greeted me with like hugs and really like kind things, and you by my brother and things like that, and it was so much unbelievably like more nice than what I thought, because I just thought of the absolute worst things in the world, and I didn't know what to expect. But I am one of the lucky few that had very accepting mum, and it was it was both extremely stressful and just full of tears and stuff. Just coming out, not even anything else, just sort of letting other people know. But I was greeted with such a good experience with like close family. And that was I had no idea. I was just yeah, that was what I had not expected, or I didn't know what to expect. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really remember too much.
Wow, that's gorgeous. Well, Julia, what do you remember? I mean, Ed's sort of just mentioned there they were crying in their room, which I think, to be
Yeah.
honest, is probably kind of a common theme in it for what it's worth. I've got recollections of something similar. So, yeah, Julia, what do you
Yeah,
remember?
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was so profound. And a bit of backstory before then, not at all to dare mention what Ed might have been going through. But from my perspective, I had this little kid and we weren't gendered. We were very lucky again because living rurally on a farm and having a bit of autonomy, I suppose, over how my kids were treated. There was only us for a lot of the time, three of us. I noticed this cracking kid that was growing and loving life and so caring and loving and curious, like everybody's kid. And then they started to shut down and they started to disappear on me. And that was the saddest, most frightening time for me because I didn't know where my kid was going. So you conjure up all of these, what has happened? What has happened to this poor kid? And your imagination is so much worse, isn't it? So from the other perspective, where Eddie's frightened because he's kind of worked out what's going on, it's been quite a long journey of watching this little kid of mine disappear. So the day, and I wasn't the most proud of myself back then because that fear and concern, where are you going? I probably put a bit of pressure on what's wrong, and Ed couldn't verbalize it. I don't think you even knew for a little
I
while.
think I was sad for quite a long time.
Mm,
I didn't know. There was
yeah,
no language to even understand what I was feeling. It took a long time to then realize myself, and then even longer again to let
no,
other people know, or like just kind of
yeah,
think about for a long time.
what's
But
going on?
that means there was a long time of just staying there, kind of stagnant, being
Yeah,
uncertain
a long
and
time.
sad.
So I remember the day Ed said, can I talk to you? And that in itself was like, yes, please, yes, absolutely. And yeah, he was sobbing, and he used to cry with his hair over his face so no one could see him and just disappear. And even before that, the only way we could talk is like a lot of kids, not looking, going for a walk or on the beach or just side by side. So I knew it was going to be big, and my heart was in my throat. I thought, I'm going to find out what happened, and I thought something had happened at school, like something awful. And so when I remember him looking up, and he just looked up with the big eyes and said, Mum, I think I know what's wrong. I want to be male, and the relief was like, oh, my kids back. It's just battling that we can overcome, that we can do that I can make your world happen. I can move mountains again, clear obstacles, get the best thing which all parents want for their kids. And we've got this. And I couldn't have cared if Ed said I want to be a unicorn. I couldn't care. It's not about what you want to be. It's not about anything. It's how you get happy again. How do I get my kid happy and robust and caring? And loving other people and being a good human. And that's all we ever want. And so then I said to Ed, shall we tell Will, your brother? And he said, yeah, I think so, because I think the Band-Aid was off. And it was like,
I didn't want to wait and then do that again.
The relief, just palpable for everybody, was we've got a breakthrough. So Ed's brother's a pretty cool kid. And he came in and I said, well, Ed wants to tell you something, or I can't remember if you did or I did. And I said, look, Ed's he's been really unhappy, and he feels more like a boy and he wants to be one. And Will just said, oh, I've always wanted a brother. And that was it. And so life got easier after that, even though the journey's difficult. It's open and it's named, and you can work with that. But when it's unknown, it's scary. No human likes unknowns, and I think that's why we're so biased towards people, because we don't like the unknown. And the people we've found that are the most difficult are because they don't like the unknown either. They want to box us or label it. But that unknown part for me was terrible. That was going to kill my child. That was going to, it already had them disappear. That unknown, deal me out. So I best day of my life. That was the best day of my life here.
Most terrifying day of my life.
Yeah, wow, that is absolutely gorgeous. I if it's okay, I might explore a little bit. We'll go off script a little bit here because I want to explore good friend of mine who actually is a parent as well. Worked with trans youth for like decades, sort of up at the Gender Centre in Sydney. And uh we were actually talking the other day, and she said what sort of what she's noticed is that trans youth may not necessarily be able to articulate exactly who they are, and they may not have the language to start with, sort of thing. What they do know, sort of, and I certainly recall this sort of as a child, sort of, and I went a different pathway. That was my journey, but sort of is that they know what they aren't, and sort of so they know that they're not. In Ed's case, they're not female. Like, and it's very clear. Like, sort of, I think it's very clear, even just sort of just listening, sort of to Ed, sort of in a very short period of time. It's like, okay, Ed's not a girl. Like, sort of, and there is a difference between knowing that you're not a girl or not a boy. In my case, it's sort of whatever, to actually sort of getting to that point of identifying as sort of going, okay, this is kind of who I am. And I think there is a journey in there as well. Is that something that perhaps resonates, Ed, or is there anything that you sort of feel that sounds like your exploration? Because it sounds like there's a little bit of stuff there you just weren't quite feeling right before you were able to come out to your mum.
Yeah, I think something that is probably the what kind of maybe made me realize a little more was, I mean, I think I was like, well, in primary school, before everyone hit puberty, things like that, it wasn't too gendered, or like nowadays it wasn't too much. Like I did like the rugby and the sports and the soccer, like I did all these things, which again, that's not necessarily like female or male or anything. I just hung out with people. It wasn't, if it was, hey, to hang out with just girls or just boys and like that, it was fine. And I think when everyone started kind of hitting puberty and things like that, obviously me, I had physical changes that just made me extremely distressed. And I think that's probably when I started just feeling down and not myself anymore. And even at that point, like it was even at that point, again, I think as Mum's kind of said, she's never really enforced anything gender on us. Obviously, I had a name that was probably more female, and I had an identity that I was assigned that obviously didn't resonate, but I had been given that in life. And then hit puberty towards the end of primary school. I think sort of like more social groups are starting to form, both physically as well, but socially, everything just felt just wrong.
Yeah.
It wasn't that anything like I just how do I say this? It wasn't that anything that was happening was like bad, but for me it was like
Yeah.
it was not comfortable. I think for a long time even then. Like it's not like I was born and I was like, okay, now I know what the identity of male and female and non-binary, all that stuff was. That's a lot of these things have been socially made in groups and things like that. And it's kind of hard to be like, ah, yes, I know exactly who I am as soon as I'm born. It was just a lot longer. It wasn't just one day of being like, okay, I know I'm male. It was a process of being, this is feeling wrong both physically but also socially. Now things are starting to diverge. Whereas before, when I was younger, that didn't really matter. You just kind of were a kid.
Yeah.
And it was around those times that I think for me personally, I was like, okay, there's something wrong. I definitely knew what I had been assigned at that moment, female, what I was physically was wrong. I just knew that was wrong. And then I also spent time having to Google things, having to Google terms and things like that, and what was transgender, all this stuff, what is non-binary, which is a whole another thing that isn't mentioned too much in media either, and just trying to figure out sort of where I sat. That's probably also another reason why it took so long to tell anyone. One was fear, but also two was just trying to develop my own identity. And I think even after I came out, I sort of not only did it change the way how I identified and who I was, but throughout my journey from the very start, I started enforcing myself onto more male sort of gender things. But now I'm so much more comfortable doing anything. But at the start, I thought I had to prove myself to be like, yes, I am transgender, yes, I am a male, by like not doing anything in a feminine way or anything like that, if that's dressing, mannerisms, or anything. But now I don't care because I know and I'm comfortable with who I am, because I'm now certain that yes, I am a male. Whereas when I was younger, I was like, I have to prove this to everyone else without even thinking too much about what it really meant to me to be male. I was just kind of essentially what I'm trying to say is just not it wasn't just a day's process. It was really hard. But yes, the first thing I kind of figured out was, no, I'm not female, or I'm not what I was at that moment. Yeah.
You just didn't fit, did you?
Yeah.
Like either way. And I think, I agree with you, Ed. As soon as society starts imposing genders, and they do it on all of us, that's where a kid has to go from just being invisible and happy to picking a team or picking a spot or picking a box. And school in particular is getting better, I hope, but they do like to box and separate. So
because it was the social aspects first before obviously you hit puberty and the physical aspects and things like that that really highlighted, that were just at such a young age you just get put into, which is sort of what sets it all off.
Yeah.
And some of the social ones are so bizarre. Like you just like you sort of like you look at them and you go like, why are you sort of separating sort of people on this arbitrary gender thing when they're like 6, 7, 8 years old, like sort of in sort of like sports teams and shit like this, and you sort of sorry, also you feel free to swear.
No, Ed.
Okay.
That's more for you, but
I can swear. I'll find.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone can swear. But yeah, like these just bizarre things. And it's just like you just sort of you're looking at it going, what? What? It just doesn't make Doesn't make any sense.
Even paper, they put paper out, pens out, girls get the yellow, boys get, it just happens so early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's always even with things. I think sport is obviously a big one, and PE things like that. It's primary school. It's not gonna matter if it's
Yeah.
like a boys or girls team or anything like that. But even just like really simple things, like if you were splitting the class into a group, it's
Yes.
girls on that side, boys on that side, or it's
Yes.
girl, boy, or you have to find opposite gender to then do an assignment with, or it's like it's stuff that like that's not even gender roles, but that's just trying to split people up from the start.
And do you remember, I've just had a thought as well, and I can't remember primary school, certainly high school, but we had to fight. I had to write sick notes so Ed could go to school in a tracksuit because there was no
yeah.
option. It's a dress or it's pants.
Yeah.
So
Crazy, even for a female to have to wear a dress which is crippling because you now can't go upside down on the monkey bars. It's hobbles. It's a set of hobbles.
Well, I was male in the I think it was also high school as well. I up until like my last year or so, I just had to wear the sports uniform every year. But that also just singled me out because no one wore the sports uniform the entire time, and I had horrible experiences of that. But yeah.
Can't play sport. You're going to do board.
I like
it's everywhere.
It's like
Toilets,
it's this
everywhere.
bizarre patriarchal control crap going on, like a sort of like a determining what sort of genders can and can't do, like sort of
Yeah.
and what people are and aren't allowed to do with a particular body type, sort of is sort of where that I think
And
where
it
that
imposes expectations, doesn't it? Because you dress like an adult, you're separated like adults, you pick a team, and that's for everybody. And all of a sudden, your beautiful, unique individualism isn't
is
catered
gone.
for
Yeah,
because
is gone.
it's so many subtle messages. So for Ed, worse because you got to pick it. Doesn't like the team he's been assigned to.
Yeah. It's not even, you didn't even get to pick a team yet. Like it's sort
No one gets to at that age. I like things like Halloween as well. Like just as a kid, when you're younger, dressing up, you gotta either dress up as like fairies or like cowboys. Now I didn't, but like
you went as an alien.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, an alien. I love it.
An alien.
But it's like that, which is just
even little girls, everyone's frightened about standing out, so they pick on the one that stands out because that's like, thank God that's not me. So you don't go as a fairy. Why is Ed not going as a fairy? It's like Ed doesn't want to go as a fairy, but that's
even
really little.
people who identify as guys should be able. Like it's shouldn't be gendered at all.
We don't embrace unique, do we?
All right.
Very well.
Let's move on. I'd like to talk about if you can remember your first interaction with the medical system, with regards to your gender and gender affirming care, and sort of. So for the listeners, gender affirming care is quite a sort of theoretically, technically, it's actually quite a broad term and actually covers quite a lot of things. It includes all sort of everything from various social sort of things to what most people probably sort of more traditionally imagine gender affirming care is, which is sort of like medications and or sort of psychological and mental health support sort of thing. I'm happy to talk sort of about whatever you sort of whichever space you want to go into there. What do you recall your first interaction with? Because we've talked about the first sort of time you came out to your mum. Was there a first time you had to come out to a doctor, Ed, or sort of or a someone who had, to an extent, the power to sort of to assist you in your in affirming your gender?
Yeah, I think from like a I guess from like the psychological side, I had a counselor at school that I'd come out to before, and she was lovely, helped me with everything. But the actual first medical thing, I have no idea how we found this, but it was like a local GP essentially. I don't remember why we picked this specific one, or it's just there was
because
the
this
easiest access.
counselor put us onto it at school, which was really good. And I do like your word assist. it did feel more like they get to decide
Mm.
on our care than assist. But let's hope we move into a space where it is assist.
Yeah.
But yes, it was school counsellor. Amazing.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think just led us onto this GP, and that was, I can't remember what the title is called. Like the first thing, I think it like stops your periods and things like that.
Oh, the puberty blocker?
No, it wasn't. I was too old for puberty blockers.
You're on
It was progesterone.
progesterone. Yep.
Yeah, it was that. And that was the first actual thing, which is again like used for so many different circumstances, just not just transgender things. So that was probably the first thing that wasn't like for me was for my identity, and I wanted to stop that. But that was something that was used for a lot of people and wasn't as hard to access. I think the first actual thing that was something that was the most hope for me in the world and very hard to find was finding gender affirming hormones and finding just information full stop, like just trying to find that this GP didn't actually really have a particular idea, only sent us to I think it was the Royal Children's Hospital, which had a wait list of I have no idea. I never got in the end because I think we applied when I was 13 and still did we get in? I think we got in when I was just about to turn 18 or
Yeah.
something. So it was a whole
I think
wait
I think
list.
5 years.
it was back then. It was pretty bad. Like it was.
Yeah.
Really. It's a little bit better now, but yeah.
Yeah. And that I think we we didn't wait that long because I don't think I could have waited that long.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is an absurd time. I think I was lucky to have support around me that I could, but if I didn't, maybe I wouldn't be able to get there at all. But I think we found, I think just from Googling, just immense, like so much research, not really help for anyone else, just going online, trying to find other people who had figured out like how to get like I think endocrinologists and doctors to have
Yeah.
hormone things.
We had to hustle. So the first doctor worked in you might want to edit this out later, but it was in, so worked in that space,
Yep.
but couldn't guide us very well, was limited in their own knowledge potentially. So was super helpful as far as being a friendly face. We were just wanting people who understood, so we didn't have to, we could just be normal, just go, this is what we need, not be really, but so that was kind of good, the attitude, but the information lacked. So we did our own hustling, and that was on the net, Googling. We ended up in Melbourne, and even driving up there, it was like, it's going to be the same thing where we're on a wait list for 3 years. That's not going to help. Ed's going to develop by then. Like that, I'm going to lose my kid again. They're going to develop, and I'm going to end up with that same child that wasn't, wanting to participate in life. So we found an amazing doctor who, the moment we walked through the door, they had "Be Kind" on their t-shirts, and they had the rainbow symbols. It was just like moving into this fabulous space. And within the first consult, I think she said, "This is what you need."
Gave us a referral to the endocrinologist that actually
puberty blocker. We're going to send you to
puberty blockers.
Was that we can't use names.
No. I never got those. Sorry, this was just
It's okay. No, it's okay.
This is mum getting confused with progesterone and things like that.
Progesterone. Okay, progesterone.
Puberty blockers are just for context. Yeah, you have to get to the Royal Children's Hospital way earlier again, which is not as plausible for a lot of people, and you have to be quite young before you hit puberty.
Consider myself educated.
Yeah, I think you just got confused with progesterone.
But she put us straight onto an endocrinologist who got us straight onto testosterone, and life just kicked off again.
Well, I think I still had to wait till I was 16, so I was still waiting. Like, even though I was ready from so long ago, I still had to wait because obviously there's laws around when you're 16. That's when you can get into hormone treatment if you have someone who is willing to do so. And I think it was also trying to find someone who was willing. I think we were lucky. I did a lot of researching people and things like that, and this endocrinologist had worked with a lot of trans people and non-binary people and all this stuff, and was willing to, help transgender youth transition. But that isn't actually as common. I think I read a lot about all the main endocrinologists. A lot of them probably didn't want to have youth
Yeah.
under their clientele for transgender things specific, even if they had youth for other medical things, or some endocrinologists, you have to find someone so specific because they probably just aren't comfortable in their own knowledge to treat transgender people, even though it is their job and they should probably educate themselves to, treat the
I
wider
heard a
community.
lot of no's. I would spend a day on the phone and call 60 people,
Yeah.
all on the list that could help.
Yeah.
But would no, too young, no.
But it was
And
a GP who was in that queer space that actually was able to direct us, because obviously she had known other clients in that who'd gone
Yep.
there. But it was, if I hadn't had that or hadn't talked to her, it would be so much harder to find someone, because again, it's not really labeled on the website. We deny access to hormones for transgender youth, because why would that be on the website? That's a horrible branding, but what was more common than not.
Yeah.
No,
But
totally.
you hit 5 no's, Kate, and you give up, don't you? You know,
Look,
we
I
were
think
just so lucky. We went, no, we're going to go for 30 no's. Okay, we'll go for 40.
yeah, I
But
think
for
it's
anyone
really
who just hits 3 and then gives up,
I think it is really hard. I think if it's okay, Ed, can I just so you're on progesterone from about the age of 13 or 14?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
cool. Yep. And then you started T at 16, sort of.
Yeah.
Yep. So for our listeners, there's actually a couple of legal cases that are relevant here. If you go online and look up RE Jamie and RE Kelvin, so those are the two legal cases that basically give trans and gender diverse youth access to puberty blockers, and then also cross hormone therapy such as testosterone, or sort of for trans girls estrogen. Progesterone's one of those curious ones that's kind of not quite sort of in the it's not really a puberty blocker. It's also not really a cross hormone sort of uh, a gender affirming hormone therapy per se. Sort of it is used typically, as in your case, Ed, to block some of the more horrifying aspects of puberty, sort of particularly for trans youth, sort of for trans guys. So the curious thing being is that sort of, to be honest, you can actually get access to sort of a lot of our listeners would probably know you can get access to progesterone as a birth control from the age of, I think it's 13 or 14 with parental consent. But trans youth, like, it's a nightmare trying to get that access to progesterone for that sort of thing. I'd like to cycle back a little bit, if that's okay. You mentioned speaking to a school counsellor, Ed, and sort of so did you speak to the school counsellor after you came out to your mum, or was that sort of, did you see them after you came out to your mum, or did you sort of spoken to them a bit before? Like, sort of, was it something that
Yeah, I think it was like quite a few months before.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
again,
yeah.
I had spent a lot of time trying to think and
Yeah.
realize who I was myself, but I talked to this counselor who had pretty much really no prior experience with LGBTQIA plus anyone. And it was quite funny because me and one of my friends that I had met at the school,
Yeah.
who was also transgender, one of the very little amount in our school, but we both saw her like separately, but it was like two new people all at once, and I'd be like, oh, okay. She didn't know anything, but she was very accepting and open arms, and had she was just really, I think I've hit a lot of like jackpots of just people being really nice and accepting, and I just talked to her. It was yeah, it was just like talking at that point was better than nothing. But she wasn't necessarily trained in any queer things at all or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm the horrendous example. Okay. I got hormones without seeing any psychologists, any any counselors, anything like that. I walked into my GP and just demanded them. Please, people, don't do that. Like, sort of go and talk to someone. Like, it's helpful. But even after you start hormones as well. Um, um, is that do you still sort of see someone like a mental like a healthcare, sorry, a mental health professional, counselor or someone like that, to assist? Or is that something that once you kind of got on your journey, you were like, yeah, I'm pretty well sort of set here?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I definitely did a lot. If I were to go to a mental health professional now, it'd be more for anxiety or depression or things like that. I think I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much more comfortable in where I am that I also don't think about me being transgender every day too much. It's not too much of a thing that is like is big of part of my identity, but it's not something that I am like struggling to be at more myself anymore because I was fortunate to have medical things. Obviously, before any of medical things, I talked to a bunch of people,
mm,
and again, the counselor and things like that, and like during as well. But I don't necessarily too much anymore because it's not like I don't have to talk through my identity because I know who I am now, and I uh, and obviously like medical professionals are like just every now like checking in and being like, oh
yeah,
yeah, you're good and things like
yeah,
that.
yep,
But I think it was a big part, especially when you were younger and starting any medical treatments, just talking to anyone. Um, Again, psychologists and that are useful. They help you talk through things, but it was myself who um, I was searching. I searched for a counselor to help me.
yeah,
I didn't do it because I needed to prove that I was trans to then get medical help and things like that. I did it because I needed counseling and I
yeah.
had helped me go through stuff instead of as a stepping stone to then prove to other people that I was trans. It was to help me with my own identity and talk.
Yep.
Um, yeah, sorry, I finally got there in the end.
No, no, no. I think that's awesome, and I'm glad that you were able to sort of explain that. I do think that it's also important for people to realize, and for trans people to realize this as well. No one can tell you or diagnose you as trans. Like,
Mm,
that's in you. Counselors and mental health professionals are there to help you ask the right questions of yourself, in my view, and are also there to help you deal with all the shit that comes from everyone else, from society and stuff.
yes, I think that was the main.
Speaking of all the shit that comes from society, when we touched on this a little bit just before, Julia, how did you feel in those early stages of trying to access care for Ed? Like, you mentioned, like, doing 30, 40, 50 phone calls. Like, that would have been intensely frustrating, I would imagine. And and quite disheartening and traumatizing almost in a way. Like, so you're trying to look after your child and you're hitting brick wall after brick wall.
Yeah, and it's exhausting, but with that, the again, that comparison of what life was like before, that was the worst. So, anything's easier than that. But yeah, there was a lot of hopelessness felt like, oh, I know what we need. I know my kids. I know how much simpler it will be when this happens. Like even just stopping menstrual cycle, because I know that I could ask any of my friends with sons and say, do you want them to go through that? Hell no. Like
Yeah.
that is just the worst. And way to go to remind any reminders that would have put Ed back into that pre-coming out position terrified me. So I just wanted that to stop and we could fix the rest. So yeah, 40, 50 phone calls just to get something so simple to stop that agony and potential pain, and in my mind too, potentially kid suiciding or not, is crucial. So that inspired me to keep going and keep going, and I would have rung 1,000 if I had to, but took its toll. I was working nights and single parent and aware of this time that I could and couldn't spend. So difficult, and as Ed said, difficult to find information on the web. And people, even to me now, seem almost frightened to help. They say openly, the medical profession, we work in this space, we know what you're going through, and every one of them will have a story on how much pressure they're under to not provide that service and to keep it quiet, and to, even now, I think, even the surgeon that did it had top half surgery a couple of years ago, I even got the impression for him that just a bit of shh, don't go telling everyone. And he was great, but they're under their own pressures. So I feel like it's still hidden a bit, this access.
Yeah, I think also the difficulty to have access to these things made it, obviously, I think in a lot of the times, pretty much most of the first consults with anyone, if that was endocrinologist, GP, surgeon, all this stuff, it was always suspended in disbelief, being like, it's spent so many years, surely it's not this
Easy.
simple, or like to go in and be like, hey, we need help because we breached a lot of roadblocks. But I remember also kind of having to go in and sort of, I think I said, I think like you said before, again, with you don't get diagnosed with being transgender. That's not like, it's not a disease or anything. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
But I would always feel like I had to prove myself, even after being on hormones for so long, just to get surgery. When I went in for those consults, I felt like I had to be harnessed with the most information, like know everything about the surgery, things like that. Even though the consult was about the doctor talking to us about information we need and things like that. And I was scared that if I had any sort of the smallest bit of lack of knowledge, even knowing like the smallest things of like what type of like surgery tape or things like that, like I would get denied, or that I wouldn't get access to it because I had spent a lot of my life struggling to reach those points. And
they were so special to us. It just felt like they could just be taken away.
Like, I think I got annoyed at you once for asking a question that I was like, Mom, it's so sick. Like, surely you don't know this. Because I was worried myself that he would just be like, you don't know enough information, go away. Which is dumb, because you should obviously ask your doctors if you're uncertain about anything. It should be the medical professionals that help you through this, not just you by yourself coming to them being like, this is what I want. They should consult and help you and talk about what you want, not just me being scared that my mom doesn't know like one small thing, and that they would completely deny everything, which doesn't
just be anxiety.
Yeah, I think that didn't happen, obviously. I was like, it was a consult for information and things like that, but I was just still feel.
They would always say at the end, which was hilarious, like we would drive to Melbourne going, please let this be a winner. Please, this is like the first racehorse out of 1,000 that's got to the track. And we'd sit there, and then we'd go, are we going to get the testosterone, or are we going to get the surgery? And that would be a half-hour consult. And then at the end, they'd go, so we're willing to help you. And we're like, whoa. The whole, like, say it at the start, people. We're on your team. We're going to help. What do we need to do?
And I think, and it's also like, well, that's gracious of you. It is kind of your job. It's sort of.
I'm paying you, aren't I?
Yeah, like, this is basic medical attention that you should be giving everyone. But
would you like me to bring? I've got a pocket full of medals for people who are willing to help.
When you've got a cold, and then you go, but I promise you, I am really sick. Please, I'm sick. Okay, well, I'm going to help you with your cold.
You
just don't have to plead normally.
It is. It's like, you're exactly right. It's like sort of imagine going to the doctor with any other medical issue and then going, well, I'm willing to help you. Or potentially them going, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to help you. And you're like, what the hell?
So screwed up. We would then be going, oh my God, you're amazing. You're the Messiah. But you're right. Hang on a second. You're just the doctor that should be.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
this
funny.
should
It
be a
hadn't
part
even
of
occurred to
it.
me till right now.
Yeah. I think we were obviously you should be thankful to doctors, but I was overly thankful in
Yeah.
them just offering to help, which
Yeah.
is, I think, his past experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of it's tough one, and I think also just being in a way you're thankful that you find someone who actually does have enough knowledge to help you.
Yeah.
I found that to be a challenge as well. Like sort of is, and it's always like when my regular GP isn't available, sort of for me to go and get whatever, like an implant done, sort of like an estrogen because I get regular estrogen implants still. Um, and if my regular doctor's not available, it's just like, oh, I'd rather go for a month without getting the implant in, even though I probably do need it, sort of, rather than having to deal with a whole new doctor of
Yeah.
explaining
I think
all of the stuff.
with because I this year, well, again, I think in our story we had two different GPs. The first one, who wasn't necessarily helpful, but was in that still the air like LGBTQI area and still had clients taken on, but she wasn't that like she was a little bit helpful, but not as much in a wider span of things. Anyway, to find a second one who was again the same label, worked with LGBTQI plus like people and clients and that, but was so much more helpful. So even just the labeling itself that doctors had given themselves, it was such different arrays of knowledge and just awareness of what medical things were around. I think also same with I guess we're not in a city area, but we are more city than we are rural. But I have to get injections, of course,
Yeah.
for testosterone. But getting them in the city, I was a lot scared, being like, oh, I don't know, how do I find somewhere that hasn't like can do the injections and that? I do have someone who can do that, but it scares me going to anyone else than I do usually. Like I can't just go to a general GP because it's just so much more complex, or I don't want to have to explain myself every single time. I just want basic medical care.
But it is basic medical care, right?
Yeah.
That's the stupidity of it.
Yeah.
It is basic medical care that you should be able to just pick up the phone, make an appointment, book yourself in. But instead, you guys are going, got to get the right so there's still so many obstacles.
Yeah.
Got to get the right person, got to get someone who doesn't want to either learn or just quiz or understand or justify. Who goes through those hoops with their doctors in the normal world?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of, it's definitely not a thing. I was thinking before, and as you were sort of talking about going to see driving, Angela, as you were driving to Melbourne, sorry, and because I used to fly to Sydney, like when I first started hormone therapies, there was only one endocrinologist who actually did basically what's called informed consent care. So basically, you can get hormones sort of by essentially signing a form that says, "I understand what these are going to do to me," and there was only one endocrinologist that would actually do that. They were in Sydney, so it was a whole day trip for me. Like sort of, I flew up to Sydney, went and saw the endocrinologist in Sydney, and sort of flew back home. Whole day of work gone, like sort of $500 worth of flights, like sort of just the sheer cost of sort of that was the doctor themselves, the endocrinologist was wonderful and didn't actually charge. I was only charged Medicare sort of forever for the actual for the visits, so I didn't have to pay the endocrinologist. But yeah, and then I do remember as well. Sort of, I don't know if you sort of did this, Ed, but I remember sort of this is like back 9 years ago, 10 years ago, okay, when I was first starting, and I'd fem up like big time. I sort of I would super fem up and sort of go all conservative, and I'd have the makeup on and the bloody work. God, it was butt awful uncomfortable, and sort of It's sort of, it's like, Julia, you probably relate to this more in terms of like sort of wearing bloody heels or shit, sort of, or boots or whatever, trying to sort of walk around the city. Um, uh, you know,
Yeah, I
um,
think that's part of the having to prove yourself to a doctor, which you shouldn't have to. But I
yeah,
had I was just nervous and just trying to. I think it was a lot easier for me. I don't really have to masculinize up. I just wear shorts and a shirt, which
yeah,
anyone can wear, and I'm like done. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, it's a lot easier, way easier.
I don't
No
know. I
one
think
should
sort
wear
of.
heels in the city.
I think though it is one of those things where it's sort of like you still, but it is still a matter of like, um, I think sometimes you sort of go, oh, I'd better wear the black t-shirt or I better not wear the pink t-shirt in case that's seen as being a
Too
bit
fancy. I
femme
think
or sort of,
anything masculinized is just like very boring, dull. So
yeah,
anything nice you can't wear
yeah, it's
if you're
like
looking
sort
for
of, I know, it's like
Is it
sort
the
of
fear of getting a no? Is that what drives, or
to
is it
start with.
just
I think you
yeah.
sort of, yeah, well, for me it was. I don't know what about you.
stays
It's
with you?
to feel like you want to be taken seriously because
Mm,
it's also like you don't like it's a medical setting and you should be taken seriously in any context. But I think with a lot of like transgender topics and that, especially in media, it's just ridiculed a lot, or it's always a point of political conversation, or I think like puberty blockers being blocked in Europe because just mass misinformation and like all these
mm,
things. It's just fear, I think, and just wanting to just be taken seriously, especially with medical things. You really do want to be taken seriously. So anything you can do, even smaller things,
yeah.
even if they're ridiculous, like having to dress up for just going to
Yeah.
the doctor, um, is
Do
is
it.
comforting for even just yourself.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
I
even
think,
you can get a doctor, yeah.
yeah, I think you don't want to be the one to stand out that gives the community a sort of like makes the community sort of socially gives the community a bad impression for one, and I'm doing inverted commas here, sort of listeners. Um,
So
uh,
you're carrying all those people on your back
all
as well.
all of that social context of trying to sort of go trying to present an approachable thing for what is essentially a fairly conservative society. Sort of, whereas like my presentation is very, very different when sort of this is going very off topic of what we're sort of going to discuss in this podcast, but my presentation and the way I look is very different if I'm going to a trans or genderqueer sort of
Mm.
space or party than it is if I'm going to like even a vet ball or something like that, like sort of where, it's just they're not used to, they're not, they're not used to sort of like a trans girl in sort of Doc Marten boots and friggin' like a sequin pink sort of flary skirt. And do you know what I mean? Like sort of,
Wait, so you will hyper feminize or hyper masculinize in areas where you're going to be potentially judged, or the
yeah,
other way
I
around?
think not even just hyperfeminizing and masculizing, just trying to fit in.
yeah,
Like even when I go to queer things, you just wear whatever or wear like just really
yeah,
like nice things, or even if it's just a shirt that looks really cool and has a nice pattern, you probably
Yeah.
won't wear somewhere else because yeah, it
So it's
potentially
standing out too much or not being to type
yeah.
enough.
I think
yeah,
when I'm around friends who are like in the community as well, I have a lot more confidence. But if I'm just by myself or if I'm going to like class, things like that, I just kind of it's easier just to kind of blend in. Not that anyone ever should. I have friends who are like very loud and proud and things like that, and it's incredible. They get to wear literally whatever they want. But again, it's still that fear of like you just kind of want to blend in. It's easier than people just staring and asking questions and things like that. Because even if people have nice
That was
intent,
always you, Ed. Even at the start, Kate, when when you're starting to feel better and be better, it's like, why don't you? Because you're a really caring soul, work in this space. And it was too early, And I just remember Ed saying, "No, I just want to be me. I don't want to fly the flag. I don't want to
yeah,
carry the burden of
which is
others."
very different now. Because now
Yeah,
now I'm in advisory groups and things like that.
like you're
But when I was
stronger and
younger,
more able
yeah,
just to be him.
yeah,
It's not too much to ask,
I think
but it is.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
just when I was younger, I had a lot less confidence in myself. I knew who I was, but I didn't want to be that one. 'Cause there weren't many trans people potentially in my school and things like that
Yeah.
were open and out. I didn't want to be that one that challenged binaries, things like that, because that um is what, like, again, in media and things like that, that is those people who like made points of it, things like that. But it's incredible that people can do that, and I would now, but when I was younger, I just, again, just really wanted to
Yeah.
fit in, and it was hard because I couldn't as easily as other people, and
And
now,
you
right now,
didn't like it. I remember you saying to me, I don't want people to think this is a trend. I don't want people to think I'm just
but I think
trying to
that
be
was,
trendy.
yeah.
Because that's what a lot of media people do. They go, oh, they just want attention.
But it was interesting
No,
that I had those ideas because I was influenced by that media. Them, like,
it's
I
needed.
was scared. None of this was a trend in any sense, but I was scared myself because I was one of the trans people that, probably the first trans person that was out to other people,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be just a good fit in a box. This is what it is.
And you were in
I
the middle of that. You were in the middle of that sort of time frame when that was starting to become a bit of a sort of a narrative from the far right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it affect you at all, Kate? The when,
Um,
still, I still
not
hear it.
quite so much. I think it's sort of, I think it affects, I think that particular narrative is far more directed at trans guys, and particularly trans masculine youth. The narrative that's directed at trans women is a lot more, it's far more vicious. Like it's sort of, it's not far more vicious, that's a bit harsh. It's less about sort of, it's less about trying to make them doubt themselves. It's more about trying to make society doubt the trans woman. This is our last scripted sort of question. And I'm mindful about how I ask this question, and sort of because I think it can be a bit of a sensitive one. I haven't probably should have worked out a little bit better how to ask this, but there has been, there are sort of, so the UK has blocked sort of like has basically stopped the sort of the prescribing of puberty blockers for transgender youth. They are looking at trying to ban the use of gender affirming care of any sort of hormones for people up to the age of 21. In the US, that's sort of in 20, I think it's 20 states, the sort of puberty blockers and gender affirming hormone care is banned for anyone under the age of 18. Um, there have been, and also New Zealand has just opened an inquiry trying to do the same thing. There's been some talk in Australia of sort of among far right sort of groups about trying to sort of get these things debated in sort of in the public forum again for God knows what reason, but we'll leave that aside. I guess what I'd sort of like to perhaps ask is that you, from the age of 13, 14, you were on gender affirming care, sort of some type. If you had not, and sort of knowing that there are trans youth who can't access that care overseas, how, because sort of, how does that make you feel, and sort of in terms of, yeah, like, is there, what do you think you would have felt like if you'd been told, like, if your mum has done, like, the two of you together have done amazing things, and there are sort of and there are other people out there sort of sort of that we've talked about sort of involved in other legal cases that have sort of that have done amazing things, and you guys have done such an incredible job, and you are just absolutely gorgeous, Ed, and Julia, you're absolutely lovely as well. If you hadn't have found a yes, if you hadn't have found anyone, like, just couldn't get, where do you think you would be? Like, yeah.
think, yeah, this is a real thing for a lot of people. Even if you don't have a parent that supports you, then you're in that exact same situation, even if
Yeah.
legally you're allowed. I think I probably wouldn't be here. Like, realistically, I think also it would have been a lot worse. I think Mum said when I had came out, I was a lot more open and better and got better myself. But that would have only been that's not a solution. Just coming out, that's getting some sort of social acceptance, but getting anything medically, I still struggled like daily with everything. And if I had to do that for I don't know, like 7, 8 years, if you're 21, then like I can't do the maths, but that's like 7, 8 years. I don't think I could have done that. I know some people who can't, and I know some friends who have pushed through and were able to because of parents and family and money and things like that, and they're incredibly strong. But yeah, no, it wouldn't have looked good in probably most narratives or mine. And I think that just again shows how important it was. Even if I had some social acceptance, that wasn't the full story. I needed medical things to help me be who I was, and that was just me. Personally, for me, I needed that. Some people don't, some people do, but it's up to that person. It shouldn't be up to a politician or a state member or some random guy or girl or someone just saying, I don't want these transgender people to transition, and then making some movement about it, because it shouldn't be up to them. It should be the transgender person themselves, especially when it's, I think, I don't have any statistics of this because I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a lot of, like, it's very high suicide rates, very high depression, anxiety rates, acceptance or discrimination in schools and work and things like that. Like, everything is working against you when you're just trying to be yourself. So being able to transition medically was that just something that would help me so much, even if everything else was working against me. And that was just for me. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think without a shadow of doubt, it's very risk of losing him if I couldn't, because the basic freedoms that was taken away from it was nice just to be left with, sometimes we didn't have a toilet to go in because only male or female, but if we were left with Ed having to wear a dress, go through puberty, not be able to swim, can't show his body, can't, everyone that talks to him talks down to him and feminizes him, it would have just destroyed him. And this is a magnificent man now, and I think it's because we didn't lose many years. But if we were even lucky enough for Ed to survive, we would have lost 5 or 6 very good years of becoming a man, the man he should be. That would be lost, because he would have lived as a woman, and they're not years living, they're dying years. And that's the same, when we chatted the other day, and when some parents said, I feel such a loss, my kid is not any longer a male or female, they're the other one. No, they've been born. Now they can start to be who they're going to be. But time stops. Time stops when you're deprived, for anyone. So I shudder to think to develop an external body that's not you, that destroys your mind.
Yeah,
you can't grow.
It wasn't even just, again, like other people's perspective of me. It was my perspective of me didn't match of what was in what I was, and that was the most distressing thing. Just very simple things, waking up, getting changed, bathrooms, going to shower, things like that you do daily, was distressing and awful. And I can't imagine. I don't even know how, when I was younger, having to just do that until I got medical help. Like, it just was distressing every single time.
And I can't save you from that, Ed. Like, I used to look at it, what can I save him from? That's, if people are treating him a certain way, I can potentially save him from that. I can pick us up and move us to the middle of nowhere. But I can't save him from staring at his body in the mirror. I can't literally, as a parent, do anything to save that. And that's the thing that could kill my kid. So that's, changing your external body is nothing. Let them do it. It's nothing. It's nothing that can't be fixed or changed back again. Losing someone is permanent. Permanent. They're gone. No chance for anything then. That's big risks, big stakes they're playing. Sad.
Well, on that note, which is a
Yep.
incredible, it's an incredible note. It's a powerful note. I am very glad that you're here, Ed. I'm very glad that you're here, Julia. You guys are awesome and amazing. And it has been an absolute pleasure interviewing you for this podcast. So thank you very much. And if you would like to say goodbye to everyone who's listening, yeah.
Thank you for listening. I think people just learning and hearing about stories and education or just knowledge itself is extremely powerful. So I'm just happy to speak and be here.
Yeah, and that's where we say thank you again, Kate, because you're putting yourself out there time and time again. It's not easy. You have your own journey. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a privilege being here on. Yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, for that episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. There was a lot of information in there on gender affirming care for youth and also adults. So we provided some links in the show notes to various organisations that have information that can be of assistance if you would like to get some more information on that sort of stuff. So please head to the show notes. We look forward to talking to you on our next episode of TVK Podcast. And thank you again for all of your support. Thanks. Bye.